I almost didn't make this podcast. Why? Because I was deep in the self-publishing process for one of my novels under one of my pen names. And as always, there was a lot of chaos, confusion, and difficulty. So I thought to myself, if I'm a seasoned author and writing coach who's done this before, and I'm still finding myself stuck and confounded in the self-publishing process, even though I'm reasonably familiar with it and I know that it can be done and that I've done it multiple times, I figured, how can a newer writer figure out how to do this without going absolutely nuts? So if you're a writer who's dreaming of sharing your story with the world, who's almost done with your book or done with your book, but you're feeling overwhelmed by the self-publishing process, you've definitely come to the right place. In this episode of the How to Be an Author podcast, you'll be hanging out with me, writing coach Karena Akhavein, as I guide you through the intricacies of self-publishing. We're going to be diving deep into this whole world, and we're going to be focusing specifically on how to avoid some of the common mistakes that hinder writers' success. Not only have I witnessed talented authors stumble and falter on their path to self-publishing due to simple missteps that could have been so easily avoided, but I've done some of these mistakes myself, and they're fresh in my mind. So in this episode, you're going to get totally equipped with the knowledge, insights, and strategies you need to navigate this whole self-publishing thing with confidence. We're going to be touching on a range of topics, including things like preparing your manuscript, cover design, formatting, pricing, marketing. We're going to be demystifying some of these things that seem really kind of opaque and breaking everything down into manageable, figure-outable steps that you can follow to achieve your publishing goal. And I will be giving you my insights from my recent experience. And I think you're going to feel by the end of this that you have something of a roadmap that is going to help to steer you away from the pitfalls and towards self-publishing success. And you're going to be also avoiding some of the costly mistakes that many writers make. And remember, self-publishing is a little bit of an adventure. And once you feel that you've got this under control and that you've figured out how to do it, it's going to be all the easier for you to do this again and again and again, which, after all, is kind of the road to writing success. You don't just do this once. It's kind of a write, publish, rinse, and repeat type of thing. So let's get started. If you're a writer dreaming of becoming a successful author, join me, writing coach Karena Akhavein, on the How to Be an Author podcast, your weekly source for writing information, inspiration, and motivation. Okay, let's start off as little Debbie Downers here on the How to Be an Author podcast. I am going to be talking about some of the common mistakes that authors make that totally hinder the success of their books and of their publishing journey. And fear not, it's not just going to be a list of things that people do wrong. It's really going to be something to think about, some things that you might not have considered. And really, I'm going to be talking about ways to fix these things quickly, easily, without much time waste, because the self-publishing process, you feel like it's supposed to be just hit a button and it's done, and it usually ends up taking longer than that. I have been in situations where I've literally been on vacation and my husband's like, what the hell, we're going to the beach. What are you doing? And I am sitting there freaking out because there's something that I thought should be working and it's not. And it should be easy to figure out, right? But when you're tired, when you're overwhelmed, when you're multitasking, these things don't seem so obvious. So I'm going to give you one of the little tips that my husband actually gave me, that at first when he said that, I was going to kill him because I'm like, oh, that's so stupid in general and that doesn't work. He basically said, come on, go to sleep, step away from it, and it's going to be obvious to you in the morning. And many times he's right, because when we're overwhelmed, we can't figure things out. This is so important for me to point out. As a writing coach, a lot of what I do is mindset based, and overwhelm is a real thing. And when our brain is flooded with panic, we're not doing our best work. So it is so important for you to realize that if you're freaking out, panicking, completely overwhelmed, you're probably not going to figure out how to do these things, which is why I hope that this de-dramatizes the whole situation. Know that you are not alone and that, yes, you can figure this out. And also, if you take my course from idea to published in 6 months, that is absolutely a huge part of the course, is walking you through step by step. It's actually worth its weight in gold just for that section of the course, let alone all the writing and mindset tips and author platform tips. But the self-publishing tips in that course, I think, are something that I am so proud of having created step by step for all of you. And in fact, I mean, I can even refer back to my own course when I'm doing self-publishing. And I kind of love it because I've made it pretty simple. Also, if you're a writing coach on demand person and you're having a huge problem and you're like, okay, I thought I was doing everything right and something's stuck. Well, I can help you to troubleshoot because been there, done that. So let's start talking about some of the big mistakes. Okay. One of the huge mistakes is that people don't have their manuscript ready to go. So when it's time for you to be hitting that publish button, you need to have a manuscript that is ready. It needs to be edited. It needs to be proofread. By the way, Amazon is going to say, oh, hey, you've got some spelling errors in this manuscript. You've got some formatting problems in this manuscript, and that is going to impact how you can upload it. So definitely make sure that you triple check your proofreading, your editing, and even your formatting, because if it's wrong, it's going to cause you a lot of grief. Now, okay, the formatting is kind of a nightmare. Let's talk about that right now. The formatting can be really tough, and it's a nightmare, but it's also kind of straightforward at the same time. So this is something a lot of people get their books professionally formatted, and I'm here to say that that's probably not necessary unless you really do not know your way around Google or a computer. Otherwise, most of these platforms like Amazon and Apple Books, minimum, have very straightforward guidelines on how to format your book for uploading an ebook, a paperback, and a hardcover. Now, there are different ways that you're going to be formatting your book depending on that, different type of format: ebook, hardcover, softcover. So you need to be checking things like margins and gutters and page numbering, if you include that or not, because for an ebook, you're not including the numbering, whereas for, a paperback or a hardcover, you are. You have to account for the binding if you're working with a paperback or a hardcover, not if you're doing an ebook. And also on an ebook, you've got an interactive table of contents. And I know writers who have been stuck in hell for days, if not weeks, trying to create this table of contents. And let me tell you, it's not rocket science, but it's frustrating. So let's touch on that for 1 second. You need an interactive table of contents. And if you don't have one, that's going to be a problem. You will not be able to upload your book. And doing a table of contents is as simple as following a few steps. If you're a writing coach on demand person, I'll be helping you to do that. And if you're taking my course, you have a whole thing on how to do that. But the interactive table of contents is not just something that Amazon wants you to do that's a waste of time. It actually really helps you when you're checking your book to see if you've got everything there and all of that good stuff. So basically all it takes is some formatting. So at the end of each chapter, you're going to do a page break, and then you're going to do a chapter number or chapter title centered and formatted as level 1 in your paragraph formatting. And that's going to help it to go into, on the sidebar, you get to jump from thing to thing. And then it's very simple from there to just use a tool that's in your Word program to insert an interactive table of contents. And you can do the same thing on Pages if you're uploading to Apple Books. And by the way, I've mentioned things like Amazon and Apple Books. Don't worry, we're going to be touching on this whole question of where to self-publish these books to, because a lot of authors get totally stuck and freaked out. Don't worry, I've got you. Okay, another place where a lot of writers get super tripped up when they are trying to upload their book and self-publish it is inadequate cover design. And this is a problem. Now, I've talked before about cover design and how important it is. And even the most successful authors sometimes have these missteps with their cover design. But it's not just today, we're not just talking about how it looks, which is, of course, important and nice. Today, we're talking more about how it formats. On your ebook is not as much of a problem because that's just the front of the book. But now when we go to paperback and hardcover, all of a sudden we're having issues. So you need to look at the different guidelines that Amazon kind of gives you as you're working on your book, and you have to really use that exact template to make your cover design, because if not, you're going to have elements that you are not happy with. So whether you're getting some letters cropped off in the final version, whether it's too dark and not readable, whether it doesn't really show up. So for example, a lot of authors that I know, they're like, oh, I want a white background book cover. And that's true. A white background actually stands out quite a bit depending on your genre. But if you don't shade around the edges of that book cover, if it's being displayed on a white background, it doesn't look like a book cover. It looks like letters on a white background. So it's kind of weird, right? So you have to think about that. And then one of my authors had this issue where the spine of the book, she didn't have the right dimensions. And so she was getting this pink stripe on the front of her book, and it was driving her crazy. So really think about how the front copy, the spine, and the back cover are all going to go together. It might be worth it to you to hire a graphic designer who's used to doing these. That might be some money that's well spent in terms of preserving your sanity. Believe me, I've often done these things myself, and sometimes I end up losing my mind again, especially when you're on deadline, especially when you've put your book on pre-order and Amazon's telling you, hey, you need to have it uploaded in the next, 12 hours. And you're like, oh no, what am I doing? And you're having nothing but problems and you're panicking. Yeah, that's a huge issue. Now let's talk on this whole pre-order issue, by the way. Pre-orders have become very popular with writers, even indie authors. And I think that this is almost like regular people imitating influencers in a way, because pre-orders are a big thing for larger publishing companies. They're used to convince bookstores to order more copies. They're used to establish a ranking so that they can market more easily as they launch the book. They're used to convince maybe news sources to cover this book and to give more opportunities to the author to appear on things like podcasts or news shows or whatever. But if you're an indie author, especially if you're a new indie author, think about how much excitement are you actually going to be drumming up for this book as a pre-order. Is it really necessary? Is it worth the blood, sweat, and tears of creating a pre-order and kind of launching and promoting that pre-order when you must know that most pre-orders don't sell as well as the actual book because people like immediate gratification? So if you're doing a pre-order and you're telling people, well, you'll be getting the book in a month, they're like, you know what? I'll circle back in a month when this book's actually out. So it's something to consider. Some authors swear by them. And then others are like, you know what? It actually didn't really yield anything for me at all. So for now, one of my books is on pre-order, and that's just because people were kind of clamoring for it because it's not my first book in this series. And so people were asking, and I actually sent off quite a few advanced reader copies, and having it available on pre-order actually makes it possible for these people to post a review. So that was kind of useful for me. But you need to know that the pre-order, it doesn't show up right away on Amazon. So that's also kind of annoying. There's a lot of troubleshooting that happens there. So know that when you're uploading your book onto Apple Books and onto Amazon, once they tell you, congratulations, your book is up and available, believe me when I say that oftentimes it's not going to be searchable right away. And this is so frustrating to authors who kind of got ahead of themselves and were like, yay, my book's out, and nobody can find it. That's super frustrating. And I've made this mistake a couple times until I finally realized, like, you know what, this is par for the course. So give yourself some breathing room. Like maybe when you first launch your book, Amazon gives you a link and you can share that link. and so does Apple Books. You can share the link itself, but warn people that you're not going to be finding this book by just searching for it, at least at first. And also, each additional review, each additional purchase makes it easier for that book to be found. But I know how frustrating it can be for authors when you have the wrong expectations and you think, oh, I'm going to hit publish and this book is going to be flying off the shelves, and that doesn't happen. Yeah, it's important for you to know what to expect, and what to expect might be crickets. Listen, it's really important for you when you put your book out there to realize that having a pretty cover and being you isn't enough. So when you're self-publishing, I talked about having all of that material ready, like your actual files of a properly formatted book, properly formatted cover, your table of contents, all of that. But also what you need are the descriptions and keywords for your book. And to get those correct descriptions, which are crucial, by the way, you need to have done some good market research. You need to know about how to position your book, what your market is, who your audience is, and you need to look for some really important keywords that are going to highlight what the important aspects of your book are so that it's more discoverable. Because if you don't have that, your book selling is a very unlikely situation, right? So you definitely need to be doing that research and looking at, okay, what's my synopsis? Does it have an awesome hook? Is it full of really good keywords? Does it really tell my audience what it is and what they're to expect? The problem with a lot of books from newer authors or indie authors is that they kind of position their book as one thing through the description, through the cover, all of that, and in fact is a completely other thing. So maybe they're promoting it as young adult, but in fact it's romance. Or maybe they're promoting it as fantasy, but in fact it's more of, a cozy book. You just don't know, but you have to make sure that you're actually doing this properly, because if not, the discoverability goes way down, and we don't want that. Another problem is that oftentimes when writers are self-publishing, they don't have a marketing and promotional plan in place. So you're going to be checking back all the time to your bookshelf on Amazon KDP, for example. And if you don't know what that even is, don't worry. We're going to be talking about that later in the podcast episode. But you're going to be checking back and you're going to be seeing no sales, and you're going to be very disappointed. Let me tell you, it takes a lot to move the needle and sell even a single book. You need the marketing, you need the promotion. You need a plan. And we've talked about this plan before. You might want to go back and check some of our episodes about author marketing, about your author platform, about advertising, about your author website. All of this creates a funnel that is part of your promotional and marketing strategy. And thinking you're going to sell any books without that is a huge mistake. If you don't have that relationship, and if you're not connecting with readers, if you don't have a brand, if you don't have a social media presence, you're seriously impacting your book's reach and its long-term success, and not in a good way. So you need to really be thinking about that. That's really massive. And too many authors, they're kind of rushing into the process, and that happens because they're in a hurry. And I'm an impatient person, so I totally get it. But if you're an impatient person too, listen to me, impatient person, telling you that really take your time establishing these things, because you don't get a second chance to launch your book unless you're relaunching and relaunching. Fine, but this is something that you want it to be a triumph, because even if you know intellectually that you're not going to be selling a bunch of books because you're a new author, it smarts when you put all your guts into it, you put all your soul into it, and it doesn't do well. This really impacts your well-being and your mindset, and you're going to be less likely to do this again if it really flopped. So this is why also I'm talking about all these mistakes, to help you to avoid to make them, so that you're more likely to do this again and again, because again, that's part of success. Another one of the huge mistakes that authors make is a pricing mistake. Oh my God. So many writers will reach out to me and be like, I don't understand. I mean, okay, I wasn't expecting to sell a gazillion copies, but I've sold exactly 0 copies, or I've sold 2 copies and it was to my mom and my best friend. And I don't understand what's going on. I've got a pretty good cover. I've got a good description. I've done everything right. What is going on? And half the time, maybe 90% of the time, I look and I see that there's a massive pricing mistake. New authors often will set an inappropriate price for their book, and it negatively impacts their sales. They price it too high. Or some of you price it too low. So let's talk about both of these things. Some of you have told me, oh, yeah, my book's $25 for an ebook because it's really good. Have you ever seen an ebook by even a best-selling author that's priced at $25? Yeah, I understand that you think that this means that you can sell just a few books and make some good money. But the problem is you're not going to sell even a few books because nobody's going to pay $25 for an unknown entity. But this pricing thing, it really does raise an interesting issue, right? Because yeah, when you're putting your book at 99 cents thinking I'm going to sell more because who doesn't, have a dollar that they can spend on a book? Well, you're pricing it too low and readers are thinking, wait a second, is this a crappy book? Because it's priced really low. Now, I think that as an indie author, it's important until you're established to be pricing yourself lower than, an author who's with a conventional publisher because you don't have the same overhead costs. You're getting much more of that royalty. So it behooves you to do some basic math. When you're uploading your book, there's going to be a whole section about pricing your book. And you're really going to want to look at it and see how much you're making per book because there is such a thing as an optimal price. First of all, on Amazon, there's a certain kind of realm of prices where you get the 70% royalty thingamajiggy, which of course you want 70% of royalties rather than getting 20%. That's awesome. That's why we're indie authors. So don't price your book outside of that bracket because that makes no sense, right? I once mentioned to one of my listeners that I was like, yeah, I make $1 a book on, some of my ebooks, et cetera. And they're like, what? You only make $1 a book? That's crazy. And I'm like, well, that's something that you need to look at because that's the reality. This is a volume business. So you can't be neglecting what the actual numbers are of your whole publishing thing, because if you do, you're going to be sorely disappointed. So that's really, really important to understand. And again, the perseverance is so important because so many authors will self-publish, they'll hit the button, they'll be like, now I sit back and the royalties just roll in. And that's not something that happens. I am here to tell you that perseverance is key and it is not easy. You have to stay motivated. And I'm sitting there checking my sales every day. And some days those sales aren't glorious, but at least they're sales, right? I try to make it a goal to watch and see what moves the needle when it comes to my promotional efforts, when it comes to my marketing efforts. Did I post a video that did really well and I had a good link to buying the book and that actually helped? That's awesome. So remember that this is a long game. You can't just think that you're going to do one and done. It is perseverance and patience, and it's challenging. So many authors give up too soon. They're like, oh, it didn't work out. Guess it wasn't meant to be. Well, that's not true. So really make sure that you give yourself the appropriate time frame for this to start actually getting that critical mass and doing well and getting readers' attention, because it's going to take a concerted effort over time for you to actually succeed. And really, time management, massively important. I was talking at the beginning of this episode about how I almost didn't do this episode because I'm, juggling so many things, balancing my writing, my editing, my clients, and my publishing and my promotion. You have to create a schedule and you have to be driven and tell yourself, okay, there are different seasons in this whole author publishing thing. How am I going to negotiate that? How am I going to organize that so that I'm not selling myself short? So yeah, one of the simplest mistakes that authors make is that they're not managing their time appropriately. So then they're panicking because they get to a situation where they're like, I have no time. It's urgent. It needs to be done right now. And they're a bit desperate. And that desperation definitely does not help in this process, especially when you're hitting some of these roadblocks that are simple to fix, except when you're panicked, they're not. So let's talk about one really important thing I want to touch on before I do this little step-by-step guide to self-publishing, because we'll be talking about troubleshooting in my step-to-step, but many of you wonder about distribution channels. And you think to yourselves, okay, there's Ingram Spark and there's Amazon KDP, there's Apple Books, there's Barnes & Noble, there's Kobo. Which platforms do I use? Well, it's pretty important to realize that, let's face it, Amazon is really the big player in the game. Apple Books is good. I like to read books on my iPad sometimes, especially since I don't know where my Kindle went, which is really annoying. But it's really important to realize that kind of Barnes and Noble or Kobo, their market share is so small. And I'm not telling you not to do it, but I'm telling you, is it worth it? You might decide that, I don't have the bandwidth for this, and my book's available on Amazon and Apple Books. End of story. And authors will spend all day long debating the merits of Ingram Spark or not. And let me tell you that what I've found, and this is personal, and so you can go ask somebody else and they'll say something different. I have found that Ingram Spark is not worth the bother because the distribution isn't really that helpful. It's not like just because your book's available on Ingram Spark, it's going to be picked up by every bookstore. That doesn't happen unless you've got awesome sales. And if you want your book in local bookstores, you can do that as an author who's got an ISBN number and who published on Amazon with print on demand. You can do that. So it's important to realize that this Ingram Spark thing, yes, it's got, some merits. Some authors will tell me that I'm completely nuts and that it's got these great advantages. And that's fine. You weigh those for you personally. So just definitely keep that in mind. Look at the pros and cons. But I would say that for me, I just do Amazon KDP and Apple Books. And Amazon KDP gives me the print on demand with a high enough quality book that I can have those paper books for my readers. I can even have a hardcover. It's a pretty fast delivery and it's reasonably economical. So I think that that's good enough for me. And then you can decide differently for yourself. So let's talk step by step to publishing a book on Amazon KDP, because this is your major one, right? This is the big player. It's probably 80% of the books that are sold this way. So, and Apple Books is similar and they walk you through it really clearly. It's a little bit more intuitive, but let's talk about how you do a step-by-step self-publishing Amazon KDP. You're going to prepare your manuscript. Remember at the beginning of this episode, I was talking about how oftentimes we have these formatting issues that make our lives hell. Yeah. So Amazon KDP has some great guidelines when it comes to how to format your Kindle ebook and also your paperback. So that's definitely something that you're going to want to check out right there from the source. You don't need to Google this one or chat GPT this one or ask anybody, because you're literally going to be going to Amazon KDP. And the website for that is kdp.amazon.com. You're going to sign in with your existing Amazon account or create a new one. Especially if you have a website with your author name, you can create a new account that way. And then from there, it's super easy to click on create a new Kindle ebook. And you're going to enter the required details, including the title, your author name, your book description. Remember, this should be good, full of keywords. Research the poop out of those. I think I should do an episode where I talk about keywords. That's going to be a really useful one day. And categories. And categories is crucial as well. So make sure you do them right. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to choose the digital file of your manuscript, usually in a doc format, and you upload it to the platform. And you've got a previewer so you can see if it's formatted right. And also, Amazon will tell you if you didn't do it right. So that's pretty important. Then you've got the uploading of the book cover. Okay, they've got a cover creator tool and it sucks. Please don't use that. You want to upload a pre-designed cover that meets the specifications. Again, provided by Amazon. Imagine that. They really do have very clear guidelines and templates when it comes to how you're uploading this cover. For your Kindle cover, it's just the single front cover. And for your paperback and your hardcover cover, it has to be a design that encompasses the front, the spine, and the back. Now you're going to be setting your pricing. Again, remember I talked about the royalty options and the pricing. You definitely want your 70% pricing for your little royalties, because that's really important, makes a big difference. But definitely consider factors like genre, book length, market competition when deciding on the price. Next, you're going to be choosing your publishing territories. You can choose worldwide distribution. I would probably do that unless there's a specific reason that you want to do specific regions. But why would you, unless your book content is problematic somewhere? But I would say worldwide is preferable. And then optionally, you can choose to enroll in KDP Select. This is an optional program, so it allows you to make your ebook exclusive to Kindle for 90 days. They say that it provides promotional opportunities, but it restricts you from selling your ebook on other platforms during this period. Some authors think this is worth it. For me, no, I don't do this. I would much rather be able to have my book available in different formats and on different platforms earlier than 90 days. Now you're going to be filling in additional details such as your language, your publishing rights, your ISBN if you have one. And you don't need an ISBN for the ebook on Amazon, but you're going to need an ISBN for your paperback and your hardcover, and it's going to be a different ISBN for each one. I talk about ISBNs a lot in my course From Idea to Publish in 6 months. And also you can ask me about it in office hours if you're in Writing Coach on Demand. So feel free to do that. And then there's digital rights management. Digital rights management restricts the copying and sharing of your ebook. It's optional. I mean, there's no reason not to do this. So you probably want to do that. It's totally fine. And then you preview this whole book, which is good, and you make the adjustments, and then you publish it. And that's really cool. But remember that once you publish it, it's going to take a while to show up. So you're going to be working on promoting it, on getting people to see it, on helping people to find it. And then you're going to be monitoring your sales and your reviews. And you're definitely going to be encouraging people to leave you a review. Now, I saw recently on TikTok, there was a whole scandal where an indie author totally tore into somebody for leaving them a 4-star review instead of a 5-star. And they just lost their mind. And they were dropped by their hybrid publishing company, which was quite interesting. So do remember that bad reviews are going to happen, even for a good book. And also remember that reviews are for your reader, not for your ego. That's very important. But definitely you can respond to reviews, but remember that you're going to be using the feedback to improve your future work, engage with readers. Don't go crazy, is super important. But, and then there's a whole separate process for the paperback and for the hardcover. But once you've mastered uploading this fabulous ebook, especially with that table of contents and all that good stuff, you're going to find uploading the paperback pretty much easier, except for that whole cover issue and for the margins and gutters issue, which again is really clearly explained on Amazon and on Apple Books. So really important to know. You probably want to take your ADHD meds if you're on them. You want to start this fresh in the morning. You want to have taken a good cup of coffee and be someplace where you can completely focus and concentrate and don't be panicked, because you can do this. So anyway, I hope this really helped. I hope this kind of got you in the mindset of thinking, you know what? Yeah, I've got this whole self-publishing thing. I can do it. And if you have any questions, reach out to me. You can send me an email by just going onto my website, creativeandwritingcoach.com, or you can look at my course, onlineCoursesForWriters.com. Pretty easy. And remember that your writing coach is always here to answer your questions and to help to take you from aspiring writer to successful author. Happy writing, and I'm looking forward to being with you next time. If you have any pressing writing-related questions or would like to be featured on the How to Be an Author podcast, please feel free to reach out on my website, creativeandwritingcoach.com.